Welcome to the Full Inbox. My name is Peyton Fox, your email marketing best friend, here to guide you through every subject line and CTA along the way. Today's episode is a special one because it's my first guest episode with a fantastic guest. I can't wait for you guys to jump in, but we're going to be talking about building your monthly email marketing calendar. It can seem daunting, and it can also seem like let's skip it. Let's just send something out. So it's going to be a great episode on the tactics that her and I use to build monthly email marketing calendars that work. Hey everybody, super excited for today's episode because I have my very good friend and my very first guest, Gabriella Rezex, here with me. Gabriella, say hey.
Hey, I'm super excited.
Awesome. We have a really fun episode today because we're going to be diving into monthly content calendar planning approach. Every freelancer, every email marketing expert probably does it a bit differently, and each brand may be a little bit different as well. So in today's episode, we're going to be diving into that. What's your approach? What's my approach? And I guess first things first, though, I would love to tell the listeners about your background, your experience in email marketing. Take it away. I would love to let them get more insight into you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so really, as many marketers, I feel like a couple of years ago, back in, I'd say around 2017, I started freelancing with a startup company when I was in college. It was actually a bed in a box company, so similar to Casper, all those kind of companies.
Nice.
And that was really my first introduction into marketing specifically. So that's what got my feet wet into the marketing world. So then after that, I started freelancing. I ended up developing my own e-commerce product that repaired broken powder-based makeup for any makeup girlies out there. Yes, yeah. So it was a product that came with a serum and a tool that would repair that specific problem if you dropped your palette. And so through that process, I started leaning into email marketing and really seeing more of a business owner's perspective on organic marketing and email marketing as a whole. I absolutely fell in love with email marketing. And from there, over the past couple of years, I've just more so honed in on email design, email copywriting, and email marketing in general. So now I typically focus in on e-commerce brands or service-based creatives.
Love it. Okay, great. Because I think that's awesome. I love the startup aspect of it because I feel like there's so many brands out there that are just getting started as a startup.
Yep.
But like the whole approach of what the heck do I send my list? What do I get out there? I've said the same things 800 times. So what's your approach? Yeah, let's jump into it. Like, what's your usual approach? Let's say you're working with a brand or the brands that you've worked with in the past. Yeah, what's your usual go-to methodology?
Yeah. Well, I feel like one thing that you and I connected on as email marketers is being very data driven, but also combining that with both. Because I feel like a lot of times in this industry, you find people who are really obsessed with the design or really obsessed with the data. But when you can bridge the gap between those two things, I think some really beautiful magic happens. So with that being said, I feel like the very first thing that I do prior to doing any kind of content mapping is always taking a deep dive into data and analytics. So this is obviously for someone who has been sending out campaigns, flows, etc. Whatever you have or whatever we're working on, my starting point is normally let's look at the data from the past 30 days from a quarterly basis and really see what has resonated with our subscribers.
That's huge. Yeah, I'm totally on the same wavelength with you because I feel like why do a shot in the dark? Like why, I mean, you can test things, like testing is always great, but like set those benchmarks. If this email has been crushing it and you didn't even send it, like you sent it like 6 months ago, but like it was your highest earning email, like let's get that back into the mix. Like that can be used again. Like once you send it out, it's not over with. Like you can incorporate that into your next month's calendar.
Yeah. I always say that the numbers really do talk. They paint the picture. You can have, a black and white picture, but they really put color to what you're trying to do. So the analytics is a huge part of that. But I think that knowing what to look for can be helpful too. So let's say you have like a unicorn campaign that you sent out and you realize that, okay, there was an increase in our click-through rate or there was an increase in the conversion level of that particular email. hop in there and look at emails side by side. Because sometimes if you're just looking at the one email, it's like, okay, sure, this was a great email, but like, what was different about this email from
Totally.
our other campaigns? But if you're just looking at the one, it can be like, okay, I don't know how to replicate this. But to your point, if it's been a little bit, even if it's been just a couple of weeks or whatever, you can repurpose that content. I think you just posted about this recently too.
Yeah,
Like,
it's so
yeah,
fitting. Yeah.
yeah, not being afraid to be like, okay, this did really well. Let's take the same content or let's even replicate this and just have the same content and see how it does again, because more than likely it is going to perform close to how it performed before.
I love that. No, I yeah, totally agree because I feel like a lot of brands get stuck in the mindset of, oh God, I've sent that out before. My subscribers are going to remember that I've done that. And let
Hmm.
me tell you, they don't even remember what you sent out 2 weeks ago, let alone what you sent out 6 months ago. So reusing that content, or at least letting that fuel the next direction. So, like you said, like if it's, hey, in that email, we had a banner up at the top, and for some reason that got so many more clicks than any of our other campaigns. Like taking that little piece and saying, hey, for the next month's calendar, let's make sure we have that banner on every email just so we can boost some click throughs on our emails. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And then also so let's say, besides kind of looking at past data, when you're looking ahead into the next month, are you really big on holidays? Like, okay, it's ice cream day, things like that. Are you checking those out?
So I definitely do check those things out. I think it definitely depends on the brand too, right? So depending on what your product category is, if it is pets, if it's consumer
Right.
product goods and you're in the food and beverage industry, like certain holidays are going to be more relevant to certain brands. So I think one is just being aware of the particular brand and what kind of holidays you're looking for. But occasionally, I mean, if you go onto Google and look at some of these calendars, it's like 100 holidays in one month that
Yeah.
like, you never would have thought of. But sometimes, especially for brands that have a quirkier brand voice or they just have quirkier branding in general, those really hit very well. Those niche, like it's National Waffle Day or whatever it might be. So I do look at that. I wouldn't say it's one of my main driving factors of
Mm.
planning content, but it is something that I think is helpful to take a peek at and maybe have some playful campaigns around that.
Yeah, and I feel like some brands too get into a bit of a shoehorn of some of these holidays, where, for example, like the ice cream day thing, it's like, okay, yeah, if
Mhm.
you're yeah, an apparel brand or you're a shoe brand and you're kind of linking this together, like what? Come on, make it make sense. So it does need
Yeah.
to flow together. And then also with that, I think there's some holidays out there that people tried to loop in. I think we just had, Mental Health Awareness Month. I think there's a
Mhm.
fine line too of realizing like you don't need to send an email that's just like happy mental health awareness month. You can
Yeah.
send out, if it works for your brand, helpful content that kind of ties in, but don't feel like you have to say today is, it's mental health awareness day one. We got to get something out that recognizes it. Like
Yep.
people can see through it. I mean, they just see kind of this, I don't know, the nicety of it. I don't want to say fakeness, but kind of that it's a brand talking to me and I'm not really reciprocating this.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm also curious. So I think that in our industry, a lot of times there's a lot of hype around omni-channel marketing, using a lot of different marketing tools. But from an email marketing perspective, sometimes what I like to do, if I have access to this data or there's a partner with my client that's able to coordinate with me, I do like to take a peek at social media and what the analytics are looking like on social as well. So if we're looking at the past 30 to 60 days and there's one piece of content that got picked up, doesn't necessarily need to be viral, but that got a lot of really good engagement. Sometimes you can pick and choose from these other organic channels that are being used or paid advertising. You can probably speak to that quite a bit too and be like, okay, this is resonating with our audience and with our customers. With that being said, we can kind of pull that in and use those learnings in email as well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I reuse that social content. And also with that, usually what you're posting on social looks way more organic looking than maybe what you're thinking of, putting a giant product image in your email. But if you have something of like you're the founder and you had this behind the scenes reel of you in the warehouse packing orders, just something like that where you're showing a more human element to your brand, getting that into your calendar is great. Yeah, using that
Yeah.
social content and let that be the testing ground to know what's going to also work well in email is great.
Yeah. Okay, I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
So after, there's a lot of different data points that you can look at. You can look at the analytics, you can look at omni-channel marketing, you can look at all of these different tools, right? What do you find is helpful for your clients or helpful for your team? How do you keep it simple in the approach and you don't get overwhelmed by, okay, I have all of these data points. How do I wrap this in and how do I apply it to this upcoming month?
It can be tricky because you'll have some brands where conversions are number one. Doesn't matter if it had a 20% open rate, if that email crushed it in sales, let's try to get that out again or let's incorporate that. Typically, when it comes to like the content and what I'm sending out, click through rate to me is number one. So that told me when somebody opened this email, they saw it, they were engaged enough to go read some more, click through. So when I'm looking at stats, click through is kind of my king. I'm looking at that's telling me that this content works really well. And then typically when I'm building out a content calendar, I like to think of things almost in brand pillars. So, if we want to look at stacking up, an email a week, that's how a lot of brands kind of go, right? Like an email a week, let's get it out. What brand pillar is it fitting into? Is it fitting into maybe customer story, or is it fitting into a sale? Is it fitting into a blog post, content, nurturing? So I look at that too, because that affects click through. So if it's a sale, we're going to have
Hmm.
a crazy click through rate, and that I'm looking at that data point. Or if it's more of a nurture post, okay, let's look at those ones. So you do need to separate out the types of content you're sending out when reviewing the stats too. That's kind of my
Yeah.
usual go.
Yeah, that's super savvy too. And I feel like that's kind of something that applies to all industries using email, not just e-commerce. It's kind of like that nurture versus selling and having a happy medium, having a balance between those campaign types. I also think that one time a personal trainer told me, he's like, just keep the KISS principle, and it always stuck to me. Keep it simple, stupid. So a
Yeah.
lot of times too, I like to, as an email marketer, but also for people who maybe can't afford to hire email marketers like you and I, keep it simple. It's good and it's better to make sure that you are consistently showing up with quality content in your subscribers' inboxes. And it's better to put something out there than to just be stuck in that frozen state and to not be doing anything in your email marketing efforts. I am so shocked by the amount of e-commerce brands out there that are under leveraging or just not utilizing email marketing at all. It's like crazy to me
A
how many
hundred
brands,
percent.
which is so nuts because I'm like, email truly is, when I look at e-commerce specifically, it is the low-hanging fruit. Like there is
Mhm.
so much opportunity out there for you. And in practice, it's not complicated, but a lot of times when you get into it, you just don't have the time to manage it. But if you're not leveraging email, that's the end of that soapbox there. But
Oh no, totally. It's really frustrating sometimes because I'll do, some audits for some brands and they're running all this paid traffic, all of these ads, and we're not sending out any emails. Like, this is free
yeah,
money. It makes no
yeah,
sense. Like, to me, especially if you're paying for the email program, like just sending out the email, like free money in a way, depending on your brand. But I mean, just
yes,
get something out there because that's just wasted, paid advertising dollars by not having email marketing being the backup, the one that's closing the sale for you.
yeah,
Completely agree. And then, I mean, totally on the same wavelength there of get something out. Do not overcomplicate it. Like if you're just like, oh, wait, I want to look at the data and I want to know if you haven't gotten an email out this week, get one out this week. Okay. Don't
yes.
overthink it. Just get something out. Send it to your highest engaged group if you're worried about affecting the rest of your list. Like they'll love to get anything from you. They're already opening, clicking, purchasing. Get some more content in front of them.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Okay, so if you had to boil the content mapping and your approach to content mapping in general to a couple of points, what do you think your main, let's say, 2 to 3 points would be?
Oh, okay. So I'm always, again, going back to the brand pillar piece. But
Yeah,
so say we're not doing any sales or anything like that. So I want to get in a schedule if we haven't locked it in. So what is our sending schedule? And honestly, I talk to so many brands. We're like, what's the best day? What's the best time? And like, honestly,
Yeah.
it does not matter. Like, it really doesn't. I mean, sure, you might have a, 3% increase in your opens on a Sunday, but nowadays, especially with Gmail, if you have a really engaged subscriber, they re-push your email up into their inbox. So if you have a really healthy list, you don't really need to worry about when the email's going out. Get it out. But
Hmm.
let's say we lock in a schedule. So if it is one a week, one every 2 weeks, I'm looking at that, kind of mapping that out. I'm in the same wavelength as you of like, okay, what holidays are coming up? So if we got Mother's
Hmm.
Day, are we planning to incorporate that? So locking that in. And then again, going back to the brand pillars. So if we're going to do a nurture piece, or we're going to do educational, which is great. Like if you feel like
Yep.
you can break down the ingredients of your supplement brand, that's a great email. It's education. It's also showing, actually some trust building there too. Like you're very transparent. So I'm looking at those pillars and then kind of fitting them in like Lego pieces in the calendar. Okay, next week we're starting the month. Let's get out a nurture piece and then, an educational piece or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But kind of breaking it out that way. And that's usually my like attack mode with it is kind of looking at it through that lens.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I think with that being said too, a lot of times like people get stuck in the weeds of what platform should I use? What should my content calendar look like? It can literally be as simple as you have a Google Doc or you have a document that's in your project management platform and you just let's say we're recording this in the month of May, which is so crazy. We're halfway through May. You
No.
could just have a document that's like June 2024. 4 campaigns are going out. Here are the 4 focuses of those campaigns. Like, look at it from a really high level perspective before getting into the weeds of like, okay, here are the 3 to 4 blocks that are going to be in this email, and here's what the subject line is going to be. I really like your approach to using the brand pillars to really guide you on a month over month basis and also being aware of holidays. And the other thing I think that we didn't touch on yet is seasons. So there's a lot of seasonal stuff too, right? So we're in the springtime season. Is it relevant to your brand to be thinking about like decluttering, spring cleaning, refreshed, renewed energy, whatever those trending topics might be for the particular season? Is there a way to also leverage that in your upcoming campaigns?
Totally, totally. And how do you feel about segmentation in your content calendar? So like, okay, we're doing a full list blast or we're targeting our lapsed customers. How do you like to fit that in your calendar?
Yeah, oh girl, I love segmenting just like you. Well, okay,
Course.
actually, this is a very relevant question. So I joined a Klaviyo webinar yesterday and they broke down, I think it was the one that was talking about like they looked at 147, don't quote me on that number, brands that have been using their accounts and they were backing it up with the data that they learned from that. I think the top performing ones. But they had said something, and I would love to hear your perspective on this because I think you have a ton of segmentation experience. My simple answer is yes, absolutely. I'm 100% on board for, okay, we have 4 campaigns. 2 of them are going to our super engaged audience. One of them's going to our full list. This one's going to like a medium engaged audience. But they had something that I wrote down. I think that they said it was the 70-20-10 rule. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, yes, I love
Okay.
that.
Okay. Why don't you elaborate on it? Because you're the segmentation queen. But I heard this and I was like, this is naturally how I approached it, but I hadn't heard of this rule before.
Okay, well, hopefully I know it the way Clavio's
Okay.
saying it, but
Okay.
my understanding is you kind of have that 70% of your messaging should be going to that general audience. And
Yep.
then that 20% is kind of segmenting down. I don't know, is that into your customer base?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
I can also pull up the exact, keep
Yeah, let's
going, but
pull
I'm
it
gonna
up.
pull it up. Yeah.
Let's quote our Clavio overlords,
Yes.
exact, just in
Yes.
case.
Okay, let's do it. Let me pull because I'm pretty sure I have the exact screenshot from it yesterday. It's like, oh, this is so good. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
I love their webinars though. They have some really good stuff.
Yeah, they did a great job. I feel like they always do a great job with all of their stuff. And I don't know if I actually have the exact screenshot that I took from it. But essentially, yeah, that's what they were saying. They were saying that 7. Let me see if I took a note on it. Shoot, I
It's
didn't. All right.
10%. So my understanding though is like the 10% is that cold audience, like doing it for your rewarming, trying to bring them back in. Like you're sending like
Yes.
10% of that volume is going to be kind of bringing in that cold audience.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So and the idea here, which is what you and I both do too, is you should be focusing on segmentation and just having those 3 buckets of people, keeping them in mind. I think a lot of people just immediately want to blast the entire list for every single campaign that goes out. And what a lot of the hesitation is we're missing out on revenue potential by not blasting our entire list, which could not be further from the truth, right? So from both of our experience, we have seen, and this is the truth of email marketing, is your core engaged audience or those more engaged audiences are going to give you a lot more revenue than blasting the entire list every single time, impacting your deliverability, and then you not being able to get in front of even your core engaged audience. So yeah, I think being very strategic about it. I think the word segmentation is kind of a trigger word for non-email marketers. They hear
Yeah.
it and they're just like, I automatically shut my brain off. But it really is simple, right? And depending on your email marketing platform, if you're just getting your feet wet and you're just getting started, there's a lot of preset segments that you can set up. But leveraging and working with an email marketer or having someone in-house that's dedicated to this is really important for you to truly squeeze everything out of your segmentation efforts.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. With email being a last thought, you're never going to reach like that full potential it could be bringing in for your brand. No, I completely agree with segmentation there. Love to do some segments. And that's where I feel like A/B testing is worth it. Like when you're getting into these segmented pods. So let's say, hey, let's send out that educational content piece, but let's have a different version for everyone who's purchased our bestseller. And maybe it's really specific to them because they understand the product and it's cross-selling into another product. Like there's different things you can do with your segments that kind of even opens it up where it's like, okay, let's test this send. Let's see how they react to it. If they react well, then let's open it up to the full list next week. Like you can use these pods of people to kind of test some content that you're not too sure about as well. But as long as it's, I'm not going to like do anything too crazy, but you can test it with them and see how it can maybe be a jumping off point for your next campaign that you want to do. And
Yeah.
yeah, I always kind of stick with the core engage is kind of my go-to. And then I
Yep.
always have a core suppression, which is like if I'm doing a
Mm-hmm.
full list blast, it's going to be, not the entire list, but kind of almost like we're kind of really casting a wide net. It's our biggest sale of the year, for example. I always have in a core suppression exclusion, which is these people have been emailed like 10 plus times and they haven't opened a single message. They are not worth tanking your deliverability. So don't feel like you need to really kind of fit in those really cold audiences super often because like you said, like blasting the full list and having them weigh down your open rates, your click-throughs, Gmail, Yahoo, Apple Mail, they are analyzing all of that and they are saying, okay, something's up here. People aren't interested because we have this group that is not interested and we kept them in our emails and now it's a domino effect. Your deliverability is king. That's the most important. So keep it
Yeah.
segmented, definitely.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Klaviyo, not to, hop on the Klaviyo soapbox, but I do feel like they do a really good job with making it easy to work on segmentation and to really evaluate segmentation versus a lot of other platforms. But yeah, absolutely. I echo everything that you said. Segmentation, definitely have it in the mix, especially while content planning.
Love it. And then, so going back to, the calendar planning piece, throw out, maybe in a recent project, has there been a campaign you tested or certain approach, anything that you were kind of surprised by with a client when you were planning their content calendar, you got pretty good results from it? Anything top of mind?
I would say that a lot of times there's so many different clients to think about, but I would say that looking at small pieces of the email and just being surprised at little design changes, like what we talked about. So like that top banner, which, from
Right.
an email design perspective, I'm quite a fan of having like some kind of call out banner at the top. I would say that, and also being really surprised with how engaged people are with loyalty programs. That's something recently that I've been very surprised by, is just seeing how well those campaigns do when you're just reminding people of either A, hey, you are a part of our subscription program, or B, hey, you're a part of our points program, and here's what you have remaining, or here's what you don't have remaining. Just reminding people, and that can go to both people that are a part of those programs and aren't a part of those programs. So you could have two campaigns going out to two different audiences. One is, hey, did you know that we have a subscription program? Or hey, did you know that we have a points program? And then the other being more tailored towards, hey, here's your behaviors and here's what's left or how you can leverage it. So I would say recently I've just been daydreaming about banners and subscription and loyalty programs. So those are the two
love
things that
that.
come to mind. Yeah.
No, I have a client that I'm thinking about right now. Every month, actually now twice a month, we
Yeah.
do a hey, you have points waiting. We also have an
Yeah.
automation that's doing it, but let me tell you, you got to remind these people like 3 or 4 times. But
Yeah.
those are the top performing emails over and over and over again. You're literally reminding people they have free money to go spend, and they love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, I oftentimes think about, because at first I'm like, wow, why do they do as well as they do? But then I think about when I'm in a coffee shop, because I'm very pro go to coffee shops at least once a week. And doesn't matter like how frequently I go inside a coffee shop, I'm always signing up for the rewards program. It's like a little treat. Even if I'm not getting rewards, I'm like, ooh, I just got points. It's like that little instant gratification, and it really does build that lifetime value as a customer. So I love it.
totally, totally. I think if you're a brand out there and you're struggling to win back that second purchase, that third purchase, loyalty is something you should definitely explore because that helps close the gap. Just it's magic. Love it. Can't recommend
Yeah.
it enough. All
Yeah.
right. Well, this is fantastic. I think there was so many good pieces that we talked about between just planning, segmentation, everything above. I want to thank you so much for hopping on my podcast for me, my very first guest. So I just want to say thank
Yay.
you.
That's such an honor. Yay.
And where can people find you if they want to reach out and say, "Hey, Gabriella, get up in this Klaviyo account. Tell me what's going wrong." Where can they reach you?
Yeah, hopefully their email says exactly that. Get up in this Klaviyo account. You can just go
Yes.
ahead and make that the subject line. That would be one I open. Yeah, so you can find me. Right now I'm working on redesigning my website. So I don't have a website right now, but you can email me at Gabriella, my first name, at grezex.com. Sure, Peyton can throw that in the show notes too, so I won't
Definitely.
bore you with spelling. So there's that. And then I'm also Gabriella Rezex, pretty much anywhere you can find me online. I'm most active on Instagram. So those are the places to find me. And yeah, I'd love to help you level up your email.
Love it. Well, I'm sure you will be back on dropping some value bombs in some later episodes. But again, want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Yay. Thank you. Thanks for having me.